Did you enjoy the bye week? Were you comfortable?
You are Locked On Trojans, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fight on, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Colkin, and thank you for making Locked On USC part of the Locked On Network, your first listen every day. Whether you're watching this show on YouTube, wherever you're going to download this podcast, it's always going to be free, and I'm always going to appreciate your support. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers, you can place a $5 bet, and you're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So, how many two-loss teams do you think are going to make the playoffs this year? I think at least 3, maybe 4. Remember, it's 12 teams. 12-team playoff now. It's hard to even believe. It's hard to imagine USC isn't even going to be part of this discussion. But it's true. They've got 5 losses. They're not sniffing the playoffs. There are 4 undefeated teams left in the regular season, right? And one of them, Army, they don't have a chance to make the 12-team field. Not going to happen. But it is nice to see, the military academies doing well. Don't get me wrong. As far as the 2-loss teams, because remember, going into the season, I said USC was going to be 10-2, make the playoffs, without a doubt. Yeah, I tripped. I pulled a Peter Griffin. Oop, out, my knee hurts. If you know, you know. So you got Alabama, you got Ole Miss, you got Georgia, you got Texas A&M. All of those schools have 2 losses. Each one of them still inside the AP poll top 15. They've got a chance. I know the college football playoff committee, that poll is the only one that matters. But you still use the AP poll kind of as a gauge. My everydayers, if you were listening to last Friday's episode of Locked On USC, I told you how much I hate the bye week. Can't stand them. Because I have to watch other teams achieve the success that, I was hoping USC would be having this year. Unfortunately, USC is tripping all over themselves. Haven't been able to do that. It's been out of their reach in 2024. So even though I didn't watch a whole lot of college football this weekend, I still watched enough to make my bad back feel even worse than it does right now. But it also reminded me, watching the teams play this year, watching the games that were available, just how mid is this year. There's really no dominant team out there. You probably say, well, Oregon looks pretty good. They do. Give credit to them. They look really good right now. Indiana, they're 10-0. Ohio State, Ole Miss, really big win. But besides, these games, these teams, even the teams that I just rattled off, Ohio State, none of them are really thinking, all right, that's the team you got to beat. That's the team. So I saw enough to say, all right, you know what? USC, they should be a part of this conversation. They're not. So while USC was using the bye week to rest up for Nebraska, I got to watch Deshaun Foster and his UCLA Bruins get another big conference win. They beat Iowa at the Rose Bowl. I think there was actually more Iowa fans than UCLA fans. However, UCLA now has more conference wins than USC. That's a fact. That's a sad fact. That sucks. USC will be at the Rose Bowl in a couple of weeks. They'll be able to, hopefully, they're going to beat Nebraska this weekend before they play that road game against UCLA. Jaden Mayaba, he's going to be leading the Trojans against the Cornhuskers this coming Saturday, who they also had a bye week. So we're going to see which team is better prepared they're coming to LA after their last loss, which just happened to be against UCLA. I believe that score is 27-20. So what are we going to learn this week? What are we learning about USC during the bye week? I don't think the fans really are going to learn anything until that game kicks off Saturday, 1 o'clock at the Coliseum. It's going to be it's basically been another week of kind of just guessing what's going on, waiting for the sound bites, for the quotes from the coaches and players after practice. Because look, right now, Coach Riley, he's staying with the cone of silence. I get it. He felt, let's change things up. We'll kick the media out of practice. Well, USC figured it out. They got to win against Rutgers. But then they kept the same routine going, traveled up to Washington, lost. So again, I don't know what's going to change, if anything's going to change. We know that we're getting a new starting quarterback. We've got Jaden Mayava. I think we're also going to find out how Coach Riley responds to pressure. I heard one head coach say recently, quote, "Pressure is a privilege. It's a privilege to have expectations. We can't run from it. We've earned the right to have pressure on our program. Those are the things we embrace." I'll tell you who said that here in just 1 second. Because it reminded me of something a different head coach said. Quote, "Tough conversations, tension-filled conversations. They don't bother me. In fact, so-and-so might say I enjoy them." When this particular head coach was pressed on why he enjoys uncomfortable situations, he said, "I don't know. I just enjoy uncomfortable conversations because I think most of the time uncomfortable is where stuff," and he didn't really say stuff, he said ish, "is getting done." And it goes back to my efficiency. You can have all the nice, comfortable conversations where everybody is just bebopping along and nothing gets done. But let's get some results out of this. So the first coach that I quoted, that was Kirby Smart. He said that after Georgia just lost their second game of the season. Oh, by the way, just kind of a little footnote to that. Um, Georgia starting quarterback Carson Beck, he's thrown interceptions in 6 straight games. They only have 2 losses, though. That's the difference. Coach Riley was the other coach that I was quoting. I think you figured that out. Coach Riley is the one who said he likes uncomfortable. So I guess we're going to find out how he handles uncomfortable this Saturday, because that's what he's going to be dealing with. I'm just not sure why he needs to be this uncomfortable for him to kind of learn how to get results. For instance, during the bye week, I don't know, why did Coach Riley need to wait till 9 games are played to make the switch to quarterback? Remember, last week when the switch was confirmed, when Coach Riley told everybody after practice, he said the choice was simple. We have 2 good players in the room, and we went back and looked at. We felt it was the best interest of the team to give Jaden a chance. It's that simple. He's improved throughout the year. He's improved in camp, and he's continued to improve. It's not easy being the backup, and I feel like he's handled that well. He's improved every single week. I think he's learned a lot from having a guy like Miller in the room. He's put together some really good practices. He's a talented kid. We're obviously excited for Jaden to get this opportunity, end quote. All right. So that's the simple reason why Coach Riley said he's making the change after 9 games. He doesn't explain why he's making the change after 9 games, other than Jaden's improved each week. I don't know. Not sure why Coach Riley needs to feel uncomfortable before he makes any changes. He had to wait until he was really behind the gun to get rid of Alex Grinch as his defensive coordinator. And now he's sitting at 4-5, deciding I got to make the change now. Not when we were 3-3, not when they were 3-4, not when the offense was sputtering. He waited until the team was 4-5, the bye week, and a home game. That's probably the right time to make the switch, using the bye week and the home game. Just feels like he waited too long, at least 2 to 3 games too long. I totally understand the process of, learning from mistakes. Last week I said Coach Riley needs to get out of his comfort zone. And I was talking about, hey, maybe it's time to start reshaping his offensive staff like he did his defensive coaching staff. I don't know. Let's see what kind of results USC gets this weekend. They changed the quarterback. We'll see if that's the first step. But we're going to find out how uncomfortable Lincoln Riley really likes it. Because I'll tell you what, this is 2 seasons in a row where the team is going backwards. They don't look like they're developing and heading in the right direction. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers, you can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, and you can do it all in one place. So when you get a hunch, it's in the middle of the game, you want to check out the stats, you can do that on FanDuel. You want to check out live play-by-play, you can do that on FanDuel. And there's so much more you can do. The same place where you're placing your bets. FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So I'm looking at the standings, and I see where USC is ranked in the big conference. I see where Nebraska is ranked. Nebraska's all over the place. They started the year 5-1. Okay. They won their border war game against Colorado. Colorado's having a much better year than USC. Nebraska almost beat Ohio State, save for a really bad call from the officiating. Maybe there was 2 bad calls. One really, really bad call. And then their last game at home, they lost to UCLA. So who is Nebraska? Well, Nebraska is sitting at 2-4 in conference, 5-4 overall. USC 2-5 in conference, 4-5 overall. These are 2 middle of the road teams. USC is actually closer to the bottom of the conference than the middle of the road, but USC is 2-5. Maryland's 1-5. It's one of their losses. Purdue's 0-6. That's it. That's the bottom of the Big Ten Conference. USC, Maryland, Purdue. So who is Nebraska? Well, like I said, they almost beat Ohio State, which is the #3 team in the country right now. But since that game against Ohio State, Nebraska lost 3 in a row. I mentioned the last game they lost before their bye week was at home to UCLA, 27-20. And the game wasn't even that close, to be honest with you. USC is making a quarterback switch for this game. We've been talking about it all last week. We're going to continue to talk about it this week leading up to the game. So maybe that gives USC a little bit of an advantage because they have a little bit of the unknown on their side right now. Also, you've got the game at home at the Coliseum, so that's advantageous. I'm not sure who Nebraska is, or even Vegas isn't sure. Because despite USC's record, they're still an 8.5-point favorite at home with a new starting quarterback. That tells me there's not a lot of respect for Nebraska right now. If you're looking for point totals over under 50.5. Yeesh. USC's averaging 30 points a game. Nebraska's averaging 23 points a game. Where are you going to go with that one? Is USC going to hit their total? Are they going to hit their over? Are they going to give up 23 points? The last time Nebraska won was a month ago, October 5th, over a month ago. That's when they beat Rutgers 14-7. So, and since then, Nebraska has only scored 14 points, I think, twice. They've only scored 58 points over their last. They've only scored a total of 58 points total over their last 4 games. That's like barely 15 points per game. It's 14 and a half. USC has a good enough defense that they should be able to keep Nebraska's offense down. They don't do anything particularly well. They got a true freshman quarterback in Dylan Raiola. We know USC was recruiting him hard. Running back, their top running back has something like 400 something yards. Wide receiver, I think Isaiah Nair is his name, has 300 something yards. They're not an explosive offense. In fact, I think they've kind of peaked. They probably plateaued this year. I mentioned that Nebraska's coming off a bye week also. Their head coach, Matt Rule, who I was actually I'm still a fan of his. He was on one of my top tier guys, top of the list when USC was searching for a head coach before they settled on Lincoln Riley. But Nebraska's head coach, Matt Rule, said that this week for them, it's a week of introspection. He talked about that last week when he spoke with the media. Quote, I think it's for me as the head coach, looking at everything that we're doing. I think it's for each assistant coach, looking at everything that we're doing, what we're doing well, what we're not doing well. I think it's for each player. Bad organizations point fingers. Good organizations look at themselves. And this is a tough time. So we have to be a good organization and look at ourselves and challenge ourselves. I like the way he's looking at things. Don't point fingers, just find a solution. Figure it out, get her done. I'm going to talk about Nebraska all week. And we got a few more shows before the game kicks off. And see, we're going to do a little bit deeper dive to see, who is Dylan Raiola, what does he do well as a quarterback? Who are their skill position players to keep an eye on at wide receiver, at running back? What are they doing well on defense? Don't forget, Sia Wright, cornerback, used to be a Trojan. We'll check in. We'll see how he's doing over there. I don't anticipate Nebraska putting up a huge fight. But again, you got a new starting quarterback. And while he's very talented, I think Jaden Mayaba is going to have a solid game. You still don't know what to anticipate out of the box. The game's going to have to slow down a little bit for him. He's not playing, it's not UNLV playing against the Mountain West. He's taken a step up. He's the starting quarterback at USC, playing against the big conference, playing against Nebraska. Would I have preferred him getting his first start against Missouri State or Georgia Southern? Absolutely. Lincoln Riley decided to use the bye week and Nebraska as the coming out party for Jaden Mayaba. We're all hoping he has a huge coming out party. All right, we got one more segment to go. When was the last time you went to any live event? I don't care what it was. A USC game, a concert, comedy show. You pick it. When was the last time you did anything where you were sitting with the crowd? Have you been to a Laker game, a Clipper game? The NBA season is upon us. GameTime has a feature called GameTime Picks. Really cool feature. It's only going to give you the best seats at the best price. And it makes choosing seats even easier. This feature filters out all the fluff. Only going to show you incredible deals on great seats. That way you're not going to waste a whole lot of time or money. That sounds pretty cool. You know my favorite feature on GameTime. It's a view from your seat. It's going to show you exactly the view you're going to have if you decide to purchase that ticket. That way, there's no risk involved. There's no risk on. I hope this is a good seat. You know what you're paying for before you check out, and with the GameTime guarantee, it always means you're getting the best price. Because if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So let me ask this question. USC's brand recognition, does it still matter? And what I mean is, how much does brand recognition still matter when name, image, and likeness, when a strong collective can buy you the recognition that you need? Does USC's brand still matter as much? As long as there's programs out there that can buy their way into the championship conversation, does that logo on the side of USC's helmet, does it still matter as much? I know I got a lot of your attention right now. People saying, yeah, it does. Does it really? Does it really? I mean, Oregon figured it out. They could put together 10,000 different uniform combinations. That didn't make a difference. It opened the eyes to recruits. But it's all those zeros that Oregon's collective is writing on the back of checks, or well, on the front of checks. That's what the players are cashing in on right now. That's what has Oregon flirting with a national championship. USC needs to reestablish itself as the school that can buy and sell who they want when they want. Right now, they're not doing it. They've been really slow playing the whole NIL process. And I'm not sure why. There are no rules. USC is always afraid of its own shadow. And what happens is during the interim, other programs pass them by. I mean, look at Ole Miss. Look at Lane Kiffin. He said it plain as day. They're going to go out, they're going to pay for the players they need that are necessary to play with and beat the Georgias and the Alabamas of the world. Well, did you watch what Ole Miss did to Georgia on Saturday? They showed why they're good enough to make the playoffs. They have 2 losses. Ole Miss's defense, really good, and that's where they spent all their money. Well, where they spent a good chunk of their money on NIL. Right now they lead the country in sacks. They've got 46. They lead the country in tackles for loss. They have 103. They're number 3 in fumbles recovered with 10. They've got the number 2 rush defense in the country. They're only giving up 80 yards per game, 79.9. They shut down Georgia. And as far as their scoring defense, number 6 in the country. They're only giving up 13 points per game. USC's only given up 21 points, just under 22 points per game. That should be good enough. It's not. So you got programs like Oregon writing checks, bringing in players that they need. You got programs like Ole Miss writing checks, bringing in players that they need. What do you have USC doing? They're catching up. I've been told, I'm telling you that USC is going to make sure that this recruiting class for 2025, it's held together. They're going to write checks. And in the meantime, USC is also taking out full-page ads in the LA Times, showing off their new football-only performance center that officially broke ground last week. Look, I'm all in for the new football facility. But is that really going to make a difference if USC isn't paying the players? You heard my Friday rant on the last episode of Locked on USC. South Carolina has to renegotiate with one of their true freshman players this year while the season's going on because he knows he's going to be a hot commodity once the season ends. He's going to have people saying, hey, I can get you this much money, just get in the transfer portal. I think that's the only way that you can build a roster now. Georgia, I mean, have they plateaued? They use the transfer portal, but not to the extent that Lane Kiffin is using it, not to the extent that Oregon's using it. Recruiting isn't going to be the answer unless you're going to pay these players, these recruits, these high school kids before they've proven anything in college. That's where we're at. USC's got the brand. They've got the national recognition. They've got the money, but they've got to spend it. Otherwise, I don't really think it matters anymore who you are. As long as you're willing to write a check, you can tell people who you are. It's going to be real interesting to see how USC uses this offseason. I know they're recruiting well. They're trying to hold this class together, which, by the way, I'm going to tell you this right now. I do not anticipate Julian Lewis signing with USC. Make sure you stay checking with the next episode of Locked on USC. I'm going to go a little bit deeper on that. But I've been hinting about it. I know there's been some crystal ball flips going on with the recruiting services. I'm getting behind the scenes feedback. Make sure you tune into the next episode of Locked on USC, and I'm going to tell you all about it. So until then, everyone, you know what to do.